Good evening, dear friend. Wherever you are tonight, tell the world you're ready to pause. Picture distant firelight dancing on ancient walls. Tonight we visit Mount Olympus, where gods were more human than their marble statues suggest. Close your eyes if you'd like. We're traveling back 3,000 years. To meet a god who understood anger better than anyone. In the beginning, there was Zeus. Powerful, proud, perpetually complicated. And there was Hera, his wife. Beautiful, brilliant, quietly furious most of the time. Their marriage was like thunder and lightning, magnificent but exhausting. From their stormy union came a child. Born not from love, but from divine frustration. The baby's first cry shook the heavens. Even the clouds paused to listen. They named him Ares. The name itself whispered of conflict, of blood spilled on bronze. Little Ares didn't coo like other babies. He roared. His tiny fists struck the air like war hammers. His eyes held fire that would never be extinguished. The other gods gathered around his cradle. Athena, goddess of wisdom, observed with calculated interest. Apollo tried to soothe him with gentle melodies. Even Aphrodite seemed puzzled by this fierce little creature. But Hera gazed down with fierce pride. Zeus recognized something familiar in those blazing eyes. Something that spoke of power yet to be understood. Growing up on Olympus was like attending the world's most exclusive academy. Everyone had their gift, their purpose, their place at the table. Everyone except Ares. Athena mastered warfare through strategy, winning battles with her mind alone. Ares understood only the crash of shield against shield, the honest brutality of combat. Where Athena brought surgical precision, Ares brought chaos. Like comparing a chess master to a thunderstorm. Both powerful, only one invited to dinner parties. Picture young Ares sitting alone in marble halls. Other gods sharing clever conversation, their laughter echoing off golden walls. While he stared into his cup, seeing only reflections of future battles. You know that feeling, don't you? When everyone speaks a language you almost understand, but never quite fluently. Ares lived there permanently. Zeus would look at him with puzzled disappointment. Like a gardener who planted roses but harvested thorns. Hera loved him fiercely, protectively. But even she couldn't translate his war cries into diplomatic speech. So Ares did what lonely children often do. He found worth in what he did best. He became war itself. The first battle came sooner than expected. Giants rose from the earth, challenging divine order. The Olympians gathered for war, and finally, Ares found his moment. He strapped on bronze armor that gleamed like captured sunlight. His spear thirsted for giant blood. His shield bore the image of terror itself. When the battle began, Ares charged without strategy, without caution. He was fury given form, violence made divine. His war cry split the morning air. Giants fell before his relentless advance. But in his bloodlust, he forgot the lesson Athena knew by heart. War without wisdom is just destruction. A clever giant trapped him, binding him in bronze chains. For months, Ares languished in captivity. The god of war, defeated by his own passion. It was Hermes who eventually freed him, slipping through shadows like quicksilver. The rescue taught Ares nothing about restraint. but it taught him about loneliness. Even in victory, he stood apart. Even in glory, he walked alone. Then came the day that changed everything. Aphrodite arrived on Olympus like sunrise after endless night. She moved like poetry given form, every gesture an invitation to wonder. Where others saw Ares as crude and violent, she saw something different. She saw passion without pretense, fire without shame. Their first meeting happened during a celebration. Ares stood apart from the revelry, watching with the intensity of a storm waiting to break. Aphrodite approached slowly, like approaching a magnificent but wounded animal. She saw past the bronze and battle scars. She saw the aching loneliness beneath his warrior's heart. In that moment, something shifted in the cosmic balance. The goddess of love discovered vulnerability. The god of war discovered tenderness. They were opposites that completed each other, fire and water finding perfect balance. Their courtship was conducted in secret gardens, away from divine gossip. Ares would bring her wildflowers still wet with morning dew. She would touch his scars and make them beautiful. For the first time in his immortal life, Ares felt understood. But Aphrodite was married to Hephaestus, the divine smith. Their affair was passionate but forbidden, love blooming in the shadows of propriety. Hephaestus was many things, but he was not blind. He sensed the change in his wife, felt the electric tension when Ares visited. So the craftsman did what he did best. He created something ingenious and terrible. A net of finest bronze, invisible as spider silk, strong as mountain roots. The lovers met in secret chambers, lost in each other's embrace. Neither noticed the gossamer chains settling around them. When the trap sprung, they were caught like butterflies in amber. Hephaestus summoned all Olympus to witness their shame. The gods came running, expecting scandal and finding poetry instead. There lay Ares and Aphrodite, entwined and unashamed. Even trapped, even humiliated, their love burned bright as summer lightning. Some gods laughed, some gasped. But wise ones recognized truth when they saw it. This was not mere lust or cosmic entertainment. This was the eternal dance of opposites. War and love, strength and beauty, finding completion in each other's arms. Sleep now, dear listener. Let your breathing slow like evening tides. The god of war has found his heart, and somewhere on Olympus, love triumphs over pride. Tomorrow brings new chapters, but tonight, let dreams of bronze and roses carry you into rest. The stars watch over your slumber, and even gods need love to make them whole. The first light finds us again, gentle as a whisper. Feel the world stirring around you, dreams fading like morning mist. Tonight we follow Ares as he descends from Olympus, drawn by the clash of bronze below. The mortal world calls to him with its beautiful, terrible wars. Far across the wine-dark sea, a great city burned with more than fire. Troy burned with pride, with passion, with the kind of conflict that makes gods take notice. Paris had stolen Helen, launching 1,000 ships and 10 years of siege. The greatest heroes of Greece camped outside Troy's walls, hungry for glory. Ares felt their bloodlust like heat from a forge. He descended from Olympus with war joy singing in his veins. This was not divine politics or family drama. This was pure, honest war. Men fighting for love, for honor, for the simple right to return home. The god took mortal form, walking among warriors like shadow-given flesh. He whispered courage to cowards, fury to the gentle-hearted. Where he passed, shields rang louder, spears flew straighter. The very air grew thick with the scent of coming battle. But Ares played no favorites. He blessed Greek and Trojan alike. War was his sacrament, violence his prayer. It mattered not who won, only that the fighting burned bright and true. Among the Greeks camped one warrior who needed no god's blessing. Achilles, son of Thetis, swift of foot and terrible in wrath. His anger was pure as Ares' own, but colder, more focused. Where Ares was wildfire, Achilles was forged steel. Their first encounter came during a battle that raged from dawn to dusk. Ares, drunk on carnage, charged through Trojan ranks like a living storm. Spears shattered against his divine flesh, arrows turned to ash in his presence. Behind him followed terror and panic, his faithful companions. Achilles met him where the fighting was thickest. The mortal spear gleamed with otherworldly light, blessed by his sea goddess mother. When their weapons clashed, the sound cracked like thunder across the battlefield. For a moment, god and hero stood locked in perfect balance. But Athena was there too, wisdom guiding her favorite's hand. She turned Ares' spear aside, let Achilles' thrust find divine flesh. Ichor flowed, golden godblood staining the earth. Ares roared in pain and surprise, his cry echoing from the walls of Troy to the ships of the Greeks. The god retreated, wounded in body but not in spirit. He had met his match in mortal fury, and strange to say, he respected it. Achilles fought with the purity Ares himself embodied. No strategy, no clever tricks. Just rage refined to diamond hardness. On Troy's walls stood another kind of hero. Hector, eldest son of Priam, defender of his city's honor. Where Achilles was storm, Hector was steadfast mountain. He fought not from wrath but from duty, from love of home and family. Ares watched this prince with different eyes. Here was war transformed by nobility, violence sanctified by sacrifice. Hector prayed before each battle, kissed his wife goodbye, blessed his infant son. He made war holy through his very presence. The god found himself torn between admiration and frustration. He wanted to bless Hector with divine might, to see him triumph over the savage Greeks. But fate had already spoken. Even gods must bow to the Moirai, the three sisters who spin destiny's thread. When Hector faced Achilles in single combat, Ares felt the weight of inevitability. He watched from the ramparts as the two heroes circled each other like planets in deadly orbit. The Trojan prince was doomed, and even divine intervention could not save him. The spear of Achilles found its mark. Hector fell like a great tree, his death cry echoing across the years. Ares felt something break inside his immortal heart. This was the price of war, the cost of the glory he so cherished. Heroes died, cities burned, mothers wept. Even gods could weep for mortal courage. After Hector's death, Ares withdrew from the battlefield. He climbed to a hilltop overlooking the Trojan plain, watching smoke rise from funeral pyres. The war continued below, but its taste had turned bitter in his mouth. For the first time, the god of war questioned his nature. Was he blessing or curse? Did his presence ennoble conflict or simply multiply suffering? The questions gnawed at him like mortal doubt, a feeling alien to divine certainty. Aphrodite found him there as evening painted the sky red. She came without words, simply sitting beside him in the growing darkness. Her presence was balm to his troubled spirit, love's gentle touch on war's raw edges. She spoke of the heroes below, of their loves and losses, their brief bright lives that burned like candles in cosmic wind. She reminded him that even in war, especially in war, human hearts revealed their deepest truths. Courage, loyalty, sacrifice, these two were sacred. Slowly, Ares began to understand. He was not just destruction but revelation. Through conflict, mortals discovered what they truly valued. Through loss, they learned the weight of love. Through victory, they tasted the brief sweetness of achievement. The siege of Troy stretched on, year bleeding into year. Ares learned to see beyond the surface chaos, to recognize the deeper currents that drove mortal hearts. He watched Odysseus craft clever strategies, Ajax stand immovable as stone, Diomedes grow from boy to hero under pressure's forge. Each warrior taught him something new about courage. Some faced death with laughter, others with grim determination. Some fought for glory, others simply to see home again. All carried within them the spark that made mortals precious to gods who had never known mortality's gift. The god began to change, softening around the edges while remaining strong at his core. He still blessed brave fighters, still thrilled to the clash of arms. But now he also mourned the fallen, honored the defeated, remembered the names of heroes who would never see another dawn. When Troy finally fell, consumed by Greek fire and ambition, Ares felt the loss like a physical blow. The greatest city of the age was dust and memory. Its heroes lived now only in songs, their courage preserved in amber verse. But perhaps that was enough. Perhaps that had always been the point. Wars end, cities crumble, empires fade. But the stories endure, carried by poets from hearth to hearth, generation to generation. In those tales, heroes live forever, their courage an eternal flame. Now rest, dear listener. Let the distant sounds of battle fade to whispers. The god of war has learned that even destruction serves creation, that every ending births a new beginning. Tomorrow brings fresh stories, but tonight, let dreams of bronze-armed heroes carry you gently into sleep. The stars remember their names, and so shall we. Welcome back, gentle dreamer. The moon rises over Olympus tonight, casting silver shadows through marble halls. Our story continues where divine hearts beat with mortal passion. Settle deeper into comfort, for tonight we explore love's darker mirror, the terrible beauty of revenge. Aphrodite paced her golden chambers like a caged swan. Beautiful, restless, burning with divine fury. Her beloved Adonis, the mortal youth whose beauty rivaled her own, lay dying in distant woods. A wild boar had gored him, and mortal flesh could not heal from such wounds. But this was no accident. Artemis, the virgin huntress, had sent the beast in jealous rage. The goddess of love had mocked the goddess of the hunt, claiming that passion was stronger than chastity. Now Adonis paid the price for divine quarrels, his blood staining autumn leaves. Ares found Aphrodite weeping tears that turned to pearls as they fell. Her grief was beautiful and terrible, love transformed into crystalline sorrow. He gathered her close, feeling her pain like fire in his own chest. For the first time, the god of war understood that some wounds cut deeper than any spear. Together they descended to the mortal world, racing across starlit skies to reach the dying youth. But they arrived too late. Adonis breathed his last in Aphrodite's arms, his beauty fading like sunset clouds. The goddess kissed his cooling lips, and from his spilled blood grew the first anemone flowers, red as love, fragile as mortal life. Aphrodite's sorrow curdled into rage. She turned to Ares with eyes like winter stars, cold and brilliant and merciless. The time for tears had passed. Now came the time for justice, for the kind of divine reckoning that reshapes the very foundations of myth. Artemis had struck through proxies, hiding behind a wild boar's tusks. But Ares understood direct action, honest warfare. If the virgin goddess wanted conflict, she would have it face to face, god to god, power against power. Yet Aphrodite stayed his hand with gentle wisdom wrapped in steel. Direct confrontation would solve nothing, she whispered. Artemis was too clever, too swift, too beloved by Zeus. But there were other ways to balance the scales, subtler paths to satisfaction. The goddess of love began to weave a web of divine justice. She whispered in the ears of mortals, planting seeds of story that would bloom into legends. She touched the hearts of poets, inspiring songs that would carry Adonis' name through centuries while Artemis' cruelty was remembered. But for Ares, patience was poison. His nature demanded action, required the clean satisfaction of battle won or lost. He chafed against Aphrodite's careful schemes like a war horse forced to walk when it longed to gallop. The opportunity came wrapped in starlight and tragedy. Orion, the great hunter, strode across earth and sky with steps that shook mountains. He was beautiful as a young god, skilled beyond mortal measure, proud enough to challenge divinity itself. He boasted that no creature could escape his arrows, that he would hunt every beast on earth until none remained. Such hubris drew divine attention like honey draws bees. Artemis heard his words and felt insulted by his arrogance. But Ares saw opportunity where others saw offense. He appeared to Orion in dreams, whispering encouragement, feeding the hunter's pride with divine breath. Why should mortals not aspire to greatness? Why should they not challenge the gods themselves? Under Ares' influence, Orion grew bolder. He pursued the Pleiades, those star-bright sisters who danced across heaven's dome. He hunted creatures sacred to Artemis, filling divine groves with mortal arrows. Each transgression was a stone thrown at a wasp's nest. Artemis' anger built like storm clouds before lightning. But she was patient, cunning, willing to let her prey condemn himself through his own actions. When she finally struck, it would be with justice's authority, not mere petty revenge. The end came swiftly, as ends always do. Artemis sent a giant scorpion, its carapace black as night sky, its sting dripping with concentrated death. The creature erupted from Earth's depths while Orion stood boasting on a hilltop. The battle was brief but titanic. Orion's arrows, which had never missed their mark, shattered against the scorpion's armor like twigs against stone. His spear, which had pierced the hearts of lions, could not find purchase in that obsidian shell. In the end, mortal flesh yielded to divine judgment. The scorpion's sting found its mark, and Orion fell like a tower of marble, beautiful even in defeat. His death cry echoed across the world, a sound like silver bells tolling. Ares felt the hunter's passing like a physical blow. Another mortal had dared to dream of godhood. Another bright flame had been extinguished by divine jealousy. The god of war knelt beside Orion's body, seeing in that still face the echo of every hero who had ever fallen. But death was not the end of the story. Zeus, moved by some cosmic whim or perhaps divine justice, lifted both Hunter and Scorpion into the sky. They became constellations, forever locked in their eternal hunt, Orion fleeing across winter skies while Scorpius pursues him through summer nights. Aphrodite found Ares standing beneath the newborn stars, his face turned toward Orion's distant light. She touched his arm gently, understanding without words the weight of his thoughts. Every victory carried its shadow, every revenge its price. They had succeeded in their subtle war against Artemis. The virgin goddess had been forced to act openly, to reveal the cruelty beneath her pristine facade. But success tasted bitter when paid for with mortal lives, when justice required innocent blood. The god of war learned a hard lesson that night. Revenge might satisfy divine pride, but it never healed divine pain. Adonis was still dead, Orion still fallen. Love lost remained lost, no matter how perfectly balanced the scales of retribution. Yet perhaps that was wisdom of its own kind. To love mortals meant accepting their fragility, their brief bright lives that flared and faded like matches in cosmic wind. Gods might rage against mortality, but they could not change its fundamental nature. Standing beneath Orion's constellation, Ares made a quiet vow. He would still be war, still be conflict and rage and honest violence. But he would also be guardian, protector of those brave enough to reach for greatness even knowing the cost. Aphrodite smiled, hearing the unspoken words. Her own grief had softened into something deeper, a love that encompassed both joy and sorrow, creation and loss. Together they were complete, war and love finding balance in each other's embrace. The stars wheeled overhead, ancient stories written in light and shadow. Heroes rose and fell, empires bloomed and withered, but love endured. Not unchanged, not unscathed, but endured nonetheless. Rest now, dear listener. Let the constellation stories sing you towards sleep. The gods have learned that even divine hearts can break, that love's greatest victory is not conquest but acceptance. Tomorrow brings new chapters, but tonight, let starlight be your blanket and legend your lullaby. The universe turns, and somewhere in its vastness, love and war dance their eternal waltz. Good evening once again, gentle soul. The fire burns lower now, shadows growing long and soft. Tonight we descend from divine heights to walk among mortals, where gods leave footprints in common clay. Rest your thoughts and join me as we discover what happens when immortal passion touches earthly hearts. In the distant lands beyond the Black Sea, where morning mist danced with evening shadows, there ruled a people unlike any other. The Amazons, warrior women who needed no man's protection, who rode horses like centaurs and drew bows like goddesses themselves. Their queen was Hippolyta, beautiful as dawn over mountains, fierce as winter storms. She ruled with wisdom earned through battle, compassion tempered by strength. Her golden girdle, gift of her father Ares, marked her as chosen among women. For Hippolyta carried within her mortal form the spark of divine fire. She was Ares' daughter, born of a brief but passionate union between the god of war and a mortal princess. In her blood flowed the essence of conflict, but refined by mortal love into something greater than simple violence. Ares watched his daughter from afar, proud as any father but careful not to interfere. The Amazons had found their own path, creating a society where strength served wisdom, where war protected peace. They were his legacy made manifest, proof that his gifts could build as well as destroy. But divine blood carries divine burdens. Hippolyta's very existence drew the attention of heroes, men who saw in her both challenge and prize. Chief among these was Heracles, strongest of mortals, tasked by his cousin Eurystheus to claim the Amazon queen's golden girdle. Heracles arrived with ships full of warriors, their bronze gleaming like captured sunlight. But he came not as conqueror but as suitor, drawn by tales of Hippolyta's beauty and strength. Here was a woman who might match his own divine heritage, who could stand beside him as equal rather than shadow. Hippolyta received him with cautious honor. She recognized in his powerful frame and lion-hearted courage an echo of her own divine nature. Here was a man worthy of consideration, one who might understand the weight of godly blood in mortal veins. Their courtship was conducted through tests of strength and skill. They raced horses across endless steppes, competed with bow and spear, matched wits over wine and starlight. Each discovered in the other a kindred spirit, someone who understood the loneliness of being more than merely human. Ares watched this romance unfold with mixed emotions. Part of him rejoiced to see his daughter find happiness with a worthy mate. But another part, the part that remembered his own forbidden love, feared the complications that came when divine and mortal worlds collided. His fears proved prophetic. Hera, ever jealous of Zeus's bastard children, whispered poison in Amazon ears. She spread rumors that Heracles had come not as suitor but as slave-taker, that he planned to steal their queen and sell their sisters. The wedding day dawned bright with promise, but ended dark with blood. Hippolyta had agreed to give Heracles her golden girdle as dowry, symbol of her love and trust. But Hera's lies had done their work, turning celebration into combat. Amazon warriors attacked the Greek ships, believing they rescued their queen from captivity. Heracles' men fought back in confusion, not understanding why their hosts had turned hostile. In the chaos, truth became casualty, trust became betrayal. Hippolyta tried to restore peace, standing between the armies with arms outstretched. But in the tumult, a spear thrown by unknown hand found her heart. The Amazon queen fell like a broken flower, her golden girdle stained with crimson. Heracles caught her as she fell, his great strength useless against the one enemy he could not fight. Death had claimed his bride before their first dawn together, leaving him with empty arms and questions that had no answers. Ares felt his daughters passing like thunder in his bones. Divine rage built within him, the kind of wrath that could crack mountains and boil seas. But as he prepared to descend in vengeance, Aphrodite's gentle hand stayed him. "Look closely," she whispered. "See what your daughter chose in her final moment. Not revenge, not hatred, but love." Even dying, Hippolyta forgave the hand that struck her, understanding that malice, not malice's tool, was the true enemy. For the first time in his immortal existence, Ares wept. Not tears of rage or frustration, but genuine grief for love cut short, for potential unfulfilled. His daughter had been proof that his nature could create beauty, and now that proof lay still in foreign soil. He knelt beside Hippolyta's body as her spirit prepared for its final journey. With divine hands, he gathered her essence, her courage, her wisdom, all the best parts of what she had been. These he wove into the very fabric of the Amazon people, ensuring that her legacy would endure through generations. The Amazons would remember their fallen queen not as victim but as martyr, one who died for love's sake rather than war's glory. They would tell her story to their daughters and their daughters' daughters, keeping alive the memory of a woman who proved that strength and gentleness could coexist. Heracles left the Amazon lands with heavy heart and heavier knowledge. He had won the golden girdle as his labor required, but the victory tasted like ashes in his mouth. Sometimes the greatest defeats came disguised as triumphs. Years passed like seasons, bringing both healing and change. The Amazons rebuilt their nation on foundations of shared sorrow, becoming even more formidable in their unity. They honored Hippolyta's memory by living as she had taught them, strong in war but stronger in wisdom. Ares found solace in watching his daughter's people flourish. They carried his gift transformed by mortal experience, violence refined into justice, strength tempered by compassion. Through them, he learned that divine nature could evolve, could grow beyond its original boundaries. Other children followed, born of brief encounters with mortal women who caught his divine eye. Each carried within them some fragment of his essence, but shaped by their human heritage into unique forms of greatness. There was Sickness, who became a mighty king but grew too proud, eventually falling to Heracles' club. Diomedes, who ruled with such cruelty that his own horses developed a taste for human flesh. Not all of Ares' children inherited his nobler aspects, but some found better paths. Harmonia, born of his union with Aphrodite, became goddess of harmony and order. Her very name spoke of balance achieved between conflict and peace, war and love unified in divine synthesis. Through his children, mortal and divine, Ares learned the complexity of legacy. Simply passing on power was not enough. The gift required wisdom to guide it, love to temper it, experience to refine it into something worthy of its divine source. He began to pay closer attention to his offspring, offering guidance where welcome, protection where needed. Not interference, but presence, the knowledge that they were not alone in their struggles with dual nature. The god of war discovered that fatherhood was itself a kind of battle, requiring different weapons than bronze and iron. Patience, understanding, the ability to watch loved ones make mistakes without rushing to prevent necessary pain. These were skills no battlefield could teach. As night deepens around us now, picture Ares standing on a high mountain, looking down at the world where his children's children play and fight and love and die. Each carries some spark of his essence, however distant, however transformed by mortal blood. Rest now, dear dreamer. Let thoughts of divine parenthood carry you toward sleep. Even gods must learn that love's greatest victory is not possession but release, not control but blessing. Tomorrow brings new stories of divine hearts learning mortal lessons. Tonight, let starlight bless your dreams. Evening finds us again, dear companion of dreams. The candles burn steadier now, their light grown familiar and comforting. Tonight we witness transformation, watching as the god of war learns lessons that cannot be taught with spear or shield. Breathe deeply and join me as divine pride meets unexpected wisdom. In the mortal world below, a young warrior named Diomedes had caught Ares' attention. Not through boasting or bloodthirst, but through something rarer, a kind of thoughtful courage that intrigued the god of war. This prince of Argos fought not from rage but from duty, not for glory but for protection of the innocent. Ares watched as Diomedes faced impossible odds during a border skirmish. Outnumbered 3-1, his small band of soldiers should have been slaughtered. But the young prince did something unexpected. He studied his enemies, learned their patterns, waited for the perfect moment to strike. When battle was joined, Diomedes moved like water finding its course. He anticipated every thrust, countered every charge, turned his enemy's strength against them. This was not Athena's cold calculation, but something warmer, instinct refined by wisdom. Curious, Ares descended to walk beside the young warrior. He appeared as a grizzled veteran, scarred and weathered by countless campaigns. In this guise, he questioned Diomedes about his methods, his philosophy of war. The prince spoke quietly as they sat by the campfire. War was not about conquest, he explained, but about protection. The greatest victory was the battle that prevented 10 others. Strength without restraint was mere brutality, but strength guided by conscience, that was heroism. These words stirred something unfamiliar in Ares' immortal heart. For centuries, he had equated power with purpose, might with right. But here was a mortal who understood distinctions the god had never considered. Diomedes continued, speaking of his father Tydeus, who had died at Thebes consumed by battle fury. The young prince had learned from that tragedy, choosing to honor his father's courage while rejecting his father's madness. War could ennoble or corrupt. The difference lay in the warrior's heart. Over the following nights, Ares found himself returning to the mortal's campfire. In disguise, he listened to stories of soldiers who had chosen mercy over vengeance, leaders who had sacrificed personal glory for their men's safety. Each tale chipped away at his certainty about war's true nature. The god began to see conflicts through different eyes. Not every battle needed divine intervention. Not every warrior craved his blessing. Some fought better when guided by conscience rather than godly rage, protected by wisdom rather than divine fury. Slowly, reluctantly, Ares admitted that his sister Athena might possess fragments of truth he had overlooked. Strategy and passion need not be enemies. Planning and courage could work in harmony, each strengthening the other. In a temple dedicated to both Ares and Athena, an elderly priestess named Theano offered daily prayers for peace. This puzzled the god of war. Why would anyone pray for peace in his temple, his sacred space dedicated to conflict? One evening, he appeared to her as a young soldier seeking guidance. The priestess welcomed him with gentle eyes and offered wine mixed with water, sweet but not overwhelming. She spoke of war's necessity and war's tragedy, how conflict could protect the innocent but also consume the righteous. True warriors, she explained, fought not because they loved violence but because they loved something more, their families, their homes, their people. The noblest battles were those fought reluctantly, by those who understood war's cost. She told him of Ares' own children, how each had faced the choice between destructive rage and protective strength. Some had chosen poorly and become tyrants. Others had found balance and become heroes. The god's gift was neither good nor evil, but potential waiting to be shaped by mortal will. As the priestess spoke, Ares felt ancient certainties shifting like sand beneath his feet. He had always thought of himself as war incarnate, but perhaps he was something subtler, more complex. Perhaps he was choice itself, the moment when peaceful hearts must decide whether to take up arms. The greatest battle of his existence was not fought on any earthly plane but within his own divine consciousness. Part of him clung to the old ways, the simple clarity of violence unleashed. But another part, growing stronger, yearned for the complexity he saw in mortal warriors. Aphrodite found him wrestling with these thoughts in a grove sacred to both love and war. She sat beside him without speaking, offering the comfort of presence rather than words. Sometimes the deepest wounds were not physical but philosophical, cuts to the very core of identity. Finally, Ares spoke his doubts aloud. If war could be noble or ignoble, protective or destructive, then what was he? Was his nature fixed or malleable? Could gods change as mortals did, learning and growing through experience? Aphrodite smiled, touching his scarred hands with infinite tenderness. All love was choice, she reminded him. Every day, she chose to embody beauty rather than vanity, passion rather than lust. The gods were not prisoners of their natures but artists of them, free to create themselves anew with each sunrise. When next the siblings met in Zeus's hall, the air between them held less tension, more possibility. Athena spoke of strategy's beauty, its elegant solutions to complex problems. Ares spoke of courage's necessity, its willingness to act when thinking was not enough. They began to see their domains not as opposing territories but as overlapping circles in a great diagram of human experience. Wise war was more effective than foolish war. Brave strategy was more honorable than cowardly strategy. Together, they could create something greater than either achieved alone. Zeus watched this reconciliation with paternal satisfaction. His children were learning what he had always known, that divine powers worked best in harmony, that wisdom without courage was empty, while courage without wisdom was dangerous. From that day forward, the greatest warriors prayed to both siblings, seeking Athena's clarity and Ares' strength in equal measure. The god of war had learned that true power lay not in overwhelming force but in appropriate force, violence calibrated to need and tempered by conscience. Now rest, dear listener, as divine siblings find their balance. Let their hard-won wisdom guide you toward peaceful sleep. Tomorrow brings the final chapters of our tale, but tonight, let dreams of harmony carry you gently into rest. Even gods can learn, and learning never truly ends. Welcome back, faithful dreamer. The night grows deeper but not darker, filled with promise of stories yet untold. Tonight we journey across the Mediterranean, where Greek gods found new names and new purposes in Roman hearts. Rest easy as we witness Ares' transformation into Mars, beloved protector of the eternal city. As Greek power waned like evening light, a new civilization rose in the west. Rome, built on 7 hills beside the Tiber, dreamed of empire with the ambition of gods. These Romans were different from the Greeks, more practical, more disciplined, more willing to embrace war as a tool of order rather than chaos. When they encountered Greek myths, the Romans did not simply adopt them. They transformed them, shaped divine stories to fit their own values and needs. Ares, the chaotic god of battle fury, became Mars, the disciplined god of military might. This transformation was not mere translation but rebirth. Where Ares had been wild passion, Mars was controlled power. Where Ares fought for the joy of conflict, Mars fought for the glory of Rome. The change reflected a fundamental shift in how civilized peoples viewed warfare itself. Mars found himself welcomed in ways Ares had never been. Roman generals prayed to him before campaigns, soldiers invoked his name before battle, farmers blessed their fields in his honor. For Mars was not just war but spring itself, the force that brought life from winter's death. The most sacred of Roman myths centered around Mars himself. Twin boys, Romulus and Remus, abandoned on the banks of the Tiber, nursed by a she-wolf sent by their divine father. In these foundling princes, Mars saw opportunity to create something unprecedented. Romulus grew strong and wise, blessed with his father's courage but tempered by mortal wisdom. When he founded the city that would bear his name, Mars walked beside him, invisible but present, guiding each decision that would shape Rome's destiny. The god learned patience in ways Ares had never needed to. Building an empire required different virtues than winning battles. Mars discovered the satisfaction of delayed gratification, the beauty of plans that unfolded over generations rather than moments. Through Romulus, Mars established laws that would govern Roman warfare for centuries. Soldiers must be citizens. War must serve the state. Victory must bring honor to Rome. These were not Ares' chaotic battles, but organized conflicts with clear purposes and moral boundaries. When Romulus died, Mars carried his spirit skyward, transforming him into Quirinus, divine protector of Rome. Father and son became gods together, their love transcending the usual boundaries between mortal and divine. Mars marveled at what Romans made of warfare. Their legions moved like clockwork mechanisms, each soldier knowing his place, each maneuver rehearsed to perfection. This was Athena's wisdom made manifest, but powered by his own fierce energy. The god walked among the legionnaires, observing their discipline, their loyalty, their unshakable confidence in Roman superiority. These were not individual heroes seeking personal glory but components of a greater machine, each valuable only as part of the whole. At first, this collective approach troubled Mars. Where was the personal courage, the individual rage that had always driven his champions? But gradually he saw deeper truths. These soldiers found strength not in isolation but in brotherhood, not in rage but in duty. Roman warfare was ritual as much as combat. Before each campaign, priests took the auspices, reading divine will in bird flight and lightning patterns. Mars himself was consulted through sacred ceremonies, his approval sought and honored. The Campus Martius, field of Mars outside Rome's walls, became the center of military life. Here young men trained for war, veterans shared their stories, generals planned campaigns that would extend Roman power to the edges of the known world. Even love found different expression in Roman culture. Mars' affair with Venus, the Roman Aphrodite, was not hidden scandal but celebrated union. Their child Aeneas became ancestor to the Julian line, divine blood flowing through Caesar's veins. This genealogy was not mere poetry but political necessity. Romans needed divine legitimacy for their conquests, heavenly approval for their earthly ambitions. Mars provided both, transforming from chaos god to state deity. The god discovered that mortal politics could be as complex as divine affairs. Roman senators invoked his name to justify wars of expansion. Priests interpreted his will to support state decisions. Poets sang his praises to inspire patriotic fervor. Mars learned to navigate these new demands with growing sophistication. He became patron not just of soldiers but of the Roman people themselves, guardian of their destiny, protector of their unique mission to civilize the world. Through centuries of conquest, Mars watched Roman eagles carry his blessings across continents. From Britain to Egypt, from Spain to Mesopotamia, Roman legions planted the seeds of Mediterranean civilization. The god took pride in this achievement while mourning its costs. Every victory brought glory but also suffering. Every conquest expanded Roman order while destroying local traditions. Mars learned that even noble purposes could demand terrible prices. As Rome reached its zenith under Augustus, Mars found himself honored above all other gods save Jupiter himself. Temples rose in his honor, festivals celebrated his gifts, coins bore his image across the empire. He had achieved a respect that Ares had never known. Yet sometimes, in quiet moments, Mars remembered his Greek origins. He thought of Aphrodite's laughter, of Troy's burning walls, of heroes who fought for love rather than conquest. Those memories reminded him that glory was not the only measure of divine worth. As Roman power began its slow decline, Mars reflected on the cycles of history. Empires rose and fell like waves upon shores, each leaving its mark before withdrawing into memory. Even divine purposes must adapt to changing times. The god realized that his transformation from Aries to Mars was not abandonment of his true nature but evolution of it. He remained war, conflict, the force that tested mortal metal. But he had learned to serve higher purposes than simple violence. Looking toward the future, Mars sensed new changes coming. Other faiths would challenge the old gods, other values would reshape human societies. But war itself would endure, adapting new forms while retaining eternal functions. The god of war had learned the deepest truth of all, that change was not defeat but opportunity. Like the seasons he also governed, divine nature could renew itself, could find fresh expressions of ancient powers. Now sleep comes calling, gentle as spring rain on Roman stones. Let Mars stand guard over your dreams tonight, disciplined protector rather than chaotic destroyer. Tomorrow brings our final chapter, but rest now in the embrace of ordered peace. Even gods must learn that true strength sometimes means knowing when not to fight. Here we are at journey's end, dear friend. The fire has burned low, casting gentle shadows that dance like memories across the walls. Tonight we close the circle of our tale, watching as Ares discovers his truest purpose in the quiet hours when even gods must rest. Breathe deeply and let the final chapter unfold. Ages flowed past like water over stones, wearing away sharp edges, smoothing ancient roughness into gentle curves. Empires rose and crumbled, heroes lived and died, but Ares endured, watching mortal struggles with eyes grown wise through countless seasons. The god had learned to see beyond surface chaos to deeper patterns. Wars were not random violence but expressions of human nature, conflicts that revealed both the worst and best in mortal hearts. Through battle, people discovered courage they never knew they possessed, loyalty stronger than death. Christianity spread across the Roman world like morning light, changing everything it touched. The old gods found themselves displaced, their temples converted, their festivals transformed. But Ares did not rage against these changes. He had learned that even divine purposes must evolve. In Christian lands, he became something subtler, less obvious but no less real. He lived in the courage of crusading knights, the determination of defenders protecting their homes, the righteous anger of those who stood against injustice. War's essence remained, merely wearing new forms. Medieval knights prayed to saints rather than gods, but Ares heard familiar echoes in their devotions. Saint Michael the warrior, Saint George the dragonslayer, Saint Joan the maiden in armor, all carried fragments of his ancient fire, his willingness to fight for what matters most. The god walked unseen through tournaments and battlefields, blessing courage wherever he found it. A young squire facing his first combat, a mother defending her children, an old soldier teaching weaponcraft to village boys, all received his quiet benediction. Ares discovered that anonymity had its own rewards. Without temples demanding sacrifice or priests interpreting his will, he was free to act according to conscience rather than ceremony. He could protect the innocent without divine politics complicating every decision. Sometimes he appeared in dreams to those who needed courage, not as a terrible war god, but as a gentle presence offering strength. A grandfather's spirit encouraging his descendant before battle, a fallen comrade's voice whispering reassurance in darkness. Love took many forms, including the form of timely aid. As centuries turned to millennia, warfare itself transformed beyond recognition. Gunpowder replaced swords, artillery eclipsed cavalry, machines began determining victory more than mortal courage. Ares adapted to these changes, finding new expressions of his eternal nature. In the trenches of the Great War, he comforted soldiers writing final letters home, their hands steady despite fear. During the Second World War, he stood with resistance fighters facing impossible odds, their defiance a flame no tyrant could extinguish. The god learned that the greatest battles were often fought in human hearts, struggles between despair and hope, cowardice and bravery, hatred and love. These inner conflicts required the same courage as any physical combat, perhaps more. Modern peacekeepers carried his blessing as surely as ancient warriors had. Police officers walking dangerous beats, firefighters charging into burning buildings, doctors battling diseases, all embodied his protective spirit transformed by changing times. Through all these ages, Aphrodite remained his constant companion. Their love had deepened beyond passion into something more enduring, a partnership that strengthened both divine natures. Together they discovered that war and love were not opposites but partners in the dance of existence. She taught him to see beauty in sacrifice, grace in courage, nobility in the willingness to suffer for others' sake. He showed her that love without the strength to protect itself was merely sentiment, that true devotion sometimes required terrible choices. Their children, both mortal and divine, carried this understanding into the world. Harmony, their daughter, became patron of those who sought balance between conflict and peace. Cupid learned to aim his arrows not just at hearts but at the courage needed to love truly. In quiet moments between world-changing events, the divine lovers would sit together watching sunset paint the sky. No words were needed. They had learned that the deepest truths were felt rather than spoken, experienced rather than explained. In today's world, Ares sees his reflection in unexpected places. Not just in soldiers and warriors, but in anyone who stands against injustice with strength tempered by wisdom. The single mother working 3 jobs to support her children, the teacher refusing to give up on difficult students, the activist speaking truth to power. These modern heroes rarely think of themselves as serving an ancient god. But Ares recognizes the divine spark within their courage, the same fire that burned in Achilles and Hector, in Hippolyta and Diomedes, in countless unnamed champions throughout history. The god has learned that true heroism is not about spectacular victories but about daily choices to do right despite difficulty. The grandfather teaching his grandson to stand up to bullies, the daughter caring for aging parents, the friend offering comfort in times of loss, all embody his deepest nature. Sometimes protection requires violence, but more often it requires patience, persistence, the quiet strength that endures when louder virtues fail. Ares has become patron of this steadfast courage, the kind that builds rather than destroys. As our story ends, picture Ares not as the young hothead of ancient myth but as a mature guardian, scarred by experience but softened by wisdom. He still carries his spear, but now it symbolizes protection rather than aggression, defense rather than conquest. The god stands watch over a world that has forgotten his name but not his gifts. Every act of courage, every moment when love conquers fear, every choice to protect rather than profit. These are his prayers now, offered by mortals who serve his cause without knowing it. In hospital rooms where loved ones keep vigil, in classrooms where teachers inspire reluctant students, in homes where families gather safely because someone was willing to work dangerous jobs, their Ares maintains his eternal watch. He has learned the deepest truth of all, that divine purpose is not about being worshipped but about being useful, not about receiving glory but about giving strength. The god of war has become the god of those who fight for others, protector of protectors. And now, dear dreamer, as night deepens toward dawn, let Ares offer you his final blessing. May you find courage when courage is needed, wisdom to know when fighting serves justice, strength to protect what you love most. May you remember that heroism lives not in grand gestures but in daily choices, not in seeking glory but in serving others. May your battles be righteous, your victories humble, your defeats temporary. The old gods live on in the hearts of those who embody their best aspects. Carry Aries fire within you, but let it warm rather than burn, illuminate rather than consume. Use strength to build, courage to heal, passion to protect. Sleep now, brave soul. Tomorrow brings new chances for heroism, small or large. But tonight, rest in the knowledge that divine courage flows through mortal veins, that love and war can work together, that even the mightiest gods are made complete by mortal compassion. The stars keep watch overhead, eternal guardians in their own right. And somewhere among them, a god who learned to love walks quietly onward, blessing courage wherever it blooms, protecting the protectors who make the world a little safer. Good night, dear friend. May your dreams be peaceful and your waking brave.